Welcome back to the WRPF podcast. I'm your host, Alex Uslar. Episode 51, Sergio Luna, Surge to New Levels, Power Surge Meet. All right. Sergio's someone very similar to myself, multiple business owner, meet director, been in the game for a long time. And I knew you'd been in the game for a long time because, man, I've been seeing your gym since way back in the day that, most of these listeners don't even know about, but they've heard me talk about a lot on this podcast, those years of the Eric Lillibridges and shit like that. And
Yep.
I'm super excited to hear about all that portion of your history, bringing you to present day, talk about the Power Surge meet, and just hear your story, man. So welcome and thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's a great opportunity. Looking forward to just kind of talking and putting some stuff out there, letting people know about Surge if they haven't heard about us already, and then also talking about Power Surge.
Hell yeah, man. So take me way back before we talk about the inception of your businesses. What got you into the sport of powerlifting? What were you doing before powerlifting, and how did you find it?
I think like many people, I was doing bodybuilding, right? And so I was enamored by the idea of like the old school classic era, the Arnold Schwarzenegger, all of that stuff. And so, in fact, my first, back then, like Google existed, but there's like, you would look up stuff and it kind of was not like it is today. So my first experience was I literally my dad took me to the bookstore. We got Arnold's Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding, the really big, thick one. And so I read that thing like back to front multiple times and just like really started hardcore into it. I was 16 at the time. My dad had been trying to push me to lift for a while because he had, basically been lifting for a very long time. I grew up in the daycares at like Valley Total Fitness, if any of you remember that. But yeah, it started there, and then I did that kind of bodybuilding kind of esque, workouts.
It's funny just to interject. Bally's gyms are so that's so old school, right? And most people don't. If you're not over 30, you probably don't know about that. Probably never heard about that. And what's so funny, it's like that name hadn't popped into my head in so long until some of the machines that I bought recently. Because I have all super old school machines, and they say on the bottom, property of Bally's Total Fitness.
Yeah.
Super old decal, like 20 years old. But yeah, man. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's wild. That was my first job too and everything. So I started there, and then I kind of realized at the time I was like, okay, I'm strong for my size, I guess. I all the guys would tell me like, hey, look, like you're pretty pretty strong, and they would kind of like ironically call me like Big Surge, right? Because I was only like when I first started lifting, I was like 115 pounds, and once I started putting on muscle, I was still like 145. So I was pretty scrawny because I was boxing before then, and I'm just generally like an ectomorph kind of body type. And so I went to college. I heard about the Illini Powerlifting Club. I was like, okay, cool. Showed up to the first meeting. My first question was, can we use straps on deadlifts? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, this isn't for me. That was my crutch.
Timeline-wise, give me the year. What year did you start college? When was this?
Let's see here. So I would have been 21, probably 20. I think it would have been like 2010.
Okay.
Something like that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, you were in the early 2000s where you hitting the Bally's and going to those gyms. So, okay, cool. Talk about 20 years ago, more or less.
And so then I basically was like, But then I had some friends that were like really into it, and I started getting into it because of them. They pushed me towards it. A lot of people were like, hey, look, just do it. Like, it's really not like, you're making too much of it. Like, just go out there, get some experience. And so I did my first meet in 2012. And
so before that, let's go back to that kind of 2010 time frame, because at that time, you were, first of all, in a very fortunate position where your university happened to have it, right? There's now more and more universities, but even more so, the universities who have it have had it for a very long time, right? Yep. But it's few and far between universities that have access to or have a powerlifting club. So was the club like, were they a very active competing club that they went to different collegiate type of places, and were they primarily single ply?
It was primarily single ply, yes. I got there at the point where I think all the like seniors had graduated, or all the people that were primarily a part of like that powerlifting club graduated, because it really died down. And when I was kind of like trying to like look into it, there was really nothing. Like there weren't any like team trainings, like there weren't really things that like people were traveling for. So once I actually got into powerlifting, that was kind of, I brought back, I was like, okay, I'm really interested. I love the sport. So I ended up competing in 2012. And once I kind of realized like, wow, I really like this. This is really fun. This is something that I can share with other people. I kid you not. It was literally probably 4 months in. It would have been like spring of 2013 that I did my first like mock powerlifting meet. So I took over the Illini Powerlifting Club because it was dead. There was nothing going on. So I was like, I will take over and become president. And so I did that. And then we did a charity meet. And we did I should have probably done deadlift only in retrospect, but we did full power. And we actually had probably like 20, 25 kids sign up for it. And we donated all the money to the Muscular Dystrophy Association right there in Champaign. And so that's kind of what started my interest in not only competing in powerlifting, but like running meets. I've always been very interested in event coordination, running events, that sort of thing. And that's also what I was going to school for, was recreation and sport management. So all of that kind of really fell together really nicely. And I kept going along with it. I would end up being president for the rest of my, the time that I was there till like 2014 when I graduated. We did a few more like charity meets. The powerlifting team grew.
Before we then move on to or not even modern day, but building the brand, I'm curious to see what kind of the evolution, because you, out of everyone that I've interviewed, 2010, 2011, a lot of people started getting into it in 2014, 2015, when it started getting more glorified, the raw years, all that kind of stuff. What did it look like kind of through your lens, going from being someone who's a bodybuilder, asking, okay, can I use straps? Were you someone, and how often was it, bodybuilders were actually squat benching and deadlifting? And what did the kind of the training style look like going from that transition from bodybuilding to powerlifting to deciding you're going to compete, to seeing what a club is doing and helping what a club is doing? Again, were they all in single ply? Were they training a West Side style? Like, what did it look like?
It was definitely very different, that time frame, and I think that's what motivated me so much to like get into it and share it with other people, because it just felt very there's a lot of gatekeeping. I felt like, it was basically like, if you're not with our team, if you're not doing things like the way that we do it, like, then you can't be a part of our team. And even to be honest, some of the guys that I trained with had a little bit of that vibe to them, you know what I mean? Even though I was like, hey guys, like, let's be a part of the entire Illini powerlifting community. And, we got new kids that like don't really know what's going on. It's our opportunity and job to like teach them how to do things. So it was a little bit like a little gatekeeping going on, a little almost elitism going on as well. And that's what kind of really made it so small though. And I think that's why like it wasn't really picking up back then. And I remember too, like, so my first meet was a USAPL meet. It was literally in the middle of nowhere. It was like in this giant, like, just like gymnasium, like very light, music in the background, 80s rock, it was very just like, hey, get in, get out. So there was like no show to it, like no music. Like it was literally just a very, very simple thing. And so, it was very strange, and I just saw a lot of opportunity there to kind of like improve it and make it better. And so I kind of was like learning a little bit of how like team training could kind of potentially run, but I wasn't really still sure. I wouldn't learn more until later on how like that would really work. But as far as like going from like bodybuilding to powerlifting, I'm very fortunate that those guys that helped me were able to kind of like switch my mentality from like, hey, look, it's cool that you're doing chest, shoulder, triceps, back, biceps, these Arnold Schwarzenegger type, workouts. But if you're actually going to compete, you need to squat, bench, deadlift, and get more sport specific with it and improve your technique. And so that's what they did for me. And it really made a big difference being able to train with other people that were a lot stronger than me and that were kind of pushing me, because otherwise I would have never done it. I would have probably been like, I'm not strong enough. Like, I don't think like I got what it takes. Like, I just would have never like made that attempt ever again. So I'm very fortunate that I ran into them.
Very nice. So what is so then that transition? You start helping with these events, trying to run these events, trying to bring people more into the sport through your lens. Then you're able to see kind of where raw powerlifting kind of started to emerge in those early years when you first started. Social media wasn't really prevalent. I don't think Instagram was around till like 2012 or 2013 or something like that. So it's a matter if you just like look on Google. So where did you kind of start seeing an evolutionary switch? And when were there actually powerlifters that you were looking at? And were there any early on?
Yeah, that's a good question. So funny enough, like Surge to New Levels, like the actual like name of that whole thing started off as a blog on Tumblr. So I don't know if you remember like Tumblr.
Yeah.
So Tumblr was basically this place where you could post like kind of like blogs or like pictures or like just kind of share things, And I found a community there like towards the end of like college, kind of mid to, like around that time frame I was building the powerlifting club. So I found it there, which was like already kind of cool, and that's kind of where I started seeing and being exposed to more of these, higher level lifters. And so then you had YouTube, right? You had YouTube where it was just like people posting their training videos, and you were just like, oh man, like, here's a video of, the Lily Bridges, competing out of, Mark Bell's, old gym, the first one, or like or Dan Green. You just saw these videos that you're like, wow, and then you had Facebook, and at the time, like
Pete Rubish, right? I feel like Pete Rubish was one of the most famous YouTube guys too. His videos were just wild. I remember before I even knew what powerlifting was, I somehow saw his videos of him just being a complete lunatic.
And it was really cool too, because like, so yeah, he had the whole like he would deadlift in his like mom's basement, and like the whole thing was like the washer and dryer were in the background.
Oh yeah,
like 800 pounds and slamming it down. You had George Lehman, you had Chris Hickson. You just had all these people that were just like insanely strong, and then Facebook too. Facebook, like they would like, back then I felt like you could tag people and it just pop up everywhere. Like it would just pop up on your feed, so to speak. So that's kind of how I started getting exposed to more of like that like top tier like powerlifting. And then I had a friend that like her name's Janelle Vector, and so basically she seen me grown up, and so she was doing like she did like marathon running, she did bodybuilding, and then she got into powerlifting. She's just a really good athlete at all these sports, and she got into powerlifting. And she started training with the Lily Bridges at Jacked Hardcore in Aurora or Montgomery, Illinois. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. So I reached out to her and I was like, what are the chances I can come out and like, train with you guys, And she was like, yeah, stop on by. So I did. I think that was like senior year that I kind of started trying to come around a little bit more. And it was like, I mean, it's so like, I'm sure people still feel this way about like, you see people on Instagram and then you see them in person. But like seeing like these people on YouTube and like just like Tumblr and all these places, I was just like, wow, like they're here in person. They're massive. They're strong. Like it's one thing to see an 1,000-pound squat in a video. It's another thing to see it in person happening, in action. And it was raw with wraps, So it was really my first introduction to like, like powerlifting, like really, really just like, that level of powerlifting. And so I just kept coming around once I graduated. Eventually, I remember the first we went to UPA Nationals. Ernie Senior was my coach. He gave me a shirt and it had my name on it. And I was like just so happy to be a part of the team. But yeah, like during that time, I got to meet other people. I got to meet Pete Rubish, so I was like, wow, this is super cool. And I got to meet Chris Hickson. That's back when I met John Hack, so John Hack used to be up in Wisconsin. I remember would go up to competitions or to Madtown Fitness back then. And that's how we met John Hack originally. And kind of started building our friendship from there. So that was almost, like 10 years ago, something like that. And it just kept kind of evolving from there. I kept kind of seeing like, what it was like to perform at that level, what it was like to really have a team, actually helping each other out, what a rotation looked like, how to wrap knees, how to just do all of these things. Eventually, my wife would join the team training as well. So we would have like the men and we would have the women. But it was really, honestly, I don't know if I'm looking at it with nostalgia, but like a golden era, it was just a time where it was just like, the limits were being pushed and like there was people consistently in that gym, like Derek Kendall. I saw him squat 800 pounds front squat.
Front squat. I remember those front squat videos, man. Crazy.
On a power bar.
What's also crazy, it's like what you were saying, getting to meet all those people. There's so many amazing figures and people involved in the sport now, but there's so many, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many opportunities to meet them, so many different times that you can see someone. And it's like just such a moment where I'm taking a quick picture to post on Instagram, but then there's 10 other people who you want to meet, who you look up to. It was such a small population of the outliers, right?
Yes.
Of those guys that were at the top. And so you being in a place where so many of them actually lived and getting to be exposed to them early on without needing to like they were just there. And that's such a crazy, cool, different thing and lens to be able to experience. And it just changed and evolved so much, right? But I agree, those outliers were so few and far between, as opposed to nowadays we have so much talent, which is so good because it's so many people getting exposed to it earlier on in the right ways, whatever it may be. But it was definitely a very special time, and being able to live it as actively as you did, you're a very small percent of or population of the people who are still around to this day, right? So that's very cool. Me, it wasn't until like 2017 when I was around. I started powerlifting in 2014. Started going to local competitions, but it wasn't until years later when it got more readily accessible, bigger, that I started seeing these people in person and being exposed. But so with that, we're at the year around 2014. You're graduated from college. You're on Team Lillibridge, training alongside these guys. Where did you said you had been doing some charity meets, some things like that. Where did the actual business now start to come into play? The idea of doing a gym and running active competitions that aren't just, small charity, whatever that may be.
Well, I graduated school and I was like, all right, cool. I'm ready for the real world. My parents are both, immigrants. I'm Mexican American. And so, it was this whole American dream thing, right? You go to school, you get the job, well, I graduated and it was like all the jobs were just not there. It was like very entry level stuff. It was things that I was just like, fuck, like I just really thought that, like me graduating from like, a Champaign and from like, being the president of the powerlifting club, the bodybuilding club, working at the rec center all 4 years and just having all these like experience and like, things like I just thought I'd be able to find something and I didn't. So I think I ended up taking like a job at an LA Fitness. I did that for a month. I quit because it was very predatory, aggressive. There's kind of a whole story to it, but like long story short, I was taught by some corporate guy that came down to basically corner people into saying yes. Some girl came in trying to like sign up, and so he was like over my shoulder watching to make sure that I did what he was saying. So, I followed all the little like things that they teach us how to like kind of corner somebody. And I could tell she was so anxious. And like literally like halfway through, I was just like, hey, like when he wasn't looking, I was like, hey, just you can go. It's fine. You don't have to keep, like with this. Well, unfortunately, like I didn't even know, but like even though she hadn't signed anything or anything, like they still billed her account for like the training sessions she was supposed to be signing up for. And so I was like trying to advocate for them to try to get them a refund because the dad was like, that's cool, but I need my money back for bills. And like literally like the front desk people could care less. And I was just like, dude, like this is fucked up. Like I really, really, really do not like this. And if I ever open up my own gym, I will never make people feel this way. So I quit right after that. I was like, I can't continue doing this. Luckily, my wife at the time was working for State Farm. I got introduced to a very successful agent. His thing was he wanted to make me an agent to basically kind of run his second office eventually. And so I think he saw potential in me, and I was like, well, maybe if it's not the fitness industry, maybe it's some other industry where, you know, some of this like business sense can kind of come into play. Because I didn't realize even back then, but I had ADHD, so I just knew there were certain things that a certain way that I thought that just wasn't like, I guess like, you know, the typical way of seeing things. So I did that for 6 months. And then basically 6 months in, I was like, I feel like a zombie. I don't feel good. Like I can't see myself doing this for the rest of my life. Like my vision was just like, this is not it. And so I told him, I'm like, thank you for the opportunity, but I have to go. And so it was at that point that I had a friend that worked at Valley Total Fitness. He opened a private studio that's like down the block right here from the gym. And I was like, hey, can I start training clients out of your facility? And so he was like, yeah. So I told myself, I'm going to give myself a month or two, see if I can kind of build that business, just personal training business, go back to what I love and see how that goes. And so I started with like 5 clients, turned that into 10, 15, 20, 25, and just kept building up an insane like client base to the point where about a year and a half into renting out of that facility, I was like, hey guys, you know, I had told them already what my plan was, but I'm ready to kind of buy my own place and start my own gym. And so, yeah, that was January of 2015 when I started over there. By the fall of 2016, I opened up the first Surge training levels. That was 2,500 square feet, super simple, literally just like a deadlift platform, a bench, you know, like some power racks, you know, and then I start adding a little bit more. 2018, we doubled in size. That was 5,000 square feet. We just broke a wall down, kept adding more. And then 2020, January of 2020, we moved into this space. This is 12,000 square feet and just kind of kept it growing. So that's kind of how that journey started right there. Yeah.
So in that period from 2014 to 2016, opening the first Surge to New Levels, like literally risking it, quitting this job, going to insurance for a lot of people, like that's a potentially cushy gig, right? Like there's job security there. You can make decent money. It's a career, but it's literally like you're just a clock puncher. You're there at the computer, you're sales, you're this, that, and the other. There's no passion, there's no love behind it. It's a job and it's a career, right? So to go to be able to be willing to risk it is a huge move in and of itself. But I'm guessing through all this time and then working at that other gym, you're still powerlifting yourself, right? You still love the sport of powerlifting, working at a personal training studio, training general population people, maybe some powerlifters and stuff also. So you go to open that first gym, 2016. So were you running events? Where did now the events start to tie into this? Was there a break once you're not involved in university anymore? How and when did you start picking that back up?
Yeah, there was a break in between basically like 2014 till 2017. So 2016, actually, that's almost kind of, that might be a lie because I moved in September of 2016. In October of 2016, I actually did like my first like little mini event. It was kind of like a breast cancer awareness kind of little thing for a friend of ours. And so we did this kind of like boot camp, and then we donated the money to like 2 families, including hers. So that was back in, that was almost like a month into already me owning my space, where I was like, I just like running events, you know, like that's just my thing. And charity has always been an easy way to kind of like be able to do what I love, get back to the community, and like, you know, be able to like unite people, you know? So there's a lot of wins there. And so, but my true first like powerlifting meet wouldn't be until September of 2017. And that was the first original Power Surge. So that was the first original Power Surge. And that was, I had Stephen Smith was the state chairman at the time with the USPA. He helped me out with that one, kind of like directing it. And so I basically kind of watched how he did it, like more in an official manner versus like what I had done in the past with the mock meets, and kind of just learn what was required of me to be able to make this like a true sanctioned event. And then after that, I was able to kind of learn to be my own meet director. So then I continued that. Then it was like Power Surge 2018, 2019, 2020. 2020 was a weird year. And then it wasn't until we moved into this space that I started adding more events, because I actually had an event space where I could run, consistent meets out of without having to rent a venue, put my entire gym in a little box truck at 9 p.m. at night so that I could get there, unload, and wait to set up when the volleyball team was done, off the court, and stay there till like 1, 2 in the morning, and then like put it all back. So yeah, that's 2017 was really the time I started getting into the more of the legitimate sanctioned powerlifting events.
Mm-hmm. I love it. So Power Surge, from its inception, was it right away a pro-am? And when did it kind of switch to that? Like, did the Lillibridges ever compete early on? Like, what did that kind of look like?
In its inception, it was not a pro-am. The first one was basically like, let's just kind of put something out there and let me just see like what I can do. And so once that one was done, at the time, like there wasn't a lot of pro meets. And I think like, if I go back, I can find podcasts where I've spoken about this, but I remember speaking to it and saying, I feel like the direction of powerlifting needs to go towards offering more like cash prizes, more incentives, more things for like bigger lifters to participate, like bigger sponsors, more production value, all of these things that I kind of like see in other like big, major, successful sports need to be kind of put into like powerlifting. And so, because at the time it was really simple, I think the only other really big meets were like the Kern, and then one that I really admired that I thought was so cool was like Big Dogs. And that was
I was going to say, if we look at 2015, 2016, I think the only big meets, because the Kern I think was a little bit after that, was Raw Unity meet, which I remember watching the live stream, and it was with a webcam, it was as crappy lo-fi as possible, but you were able to at least watch it on YouTube. You had Boss of Bosses, but then you had Big Dogs, and Big Dogs were the only one that had some sense of production to it early on. I think they were that was the foundation for that here in America for us to kind of look at, and the foundation for gathering a lot of those big names if it wasn't a Raw Unity meet, right?
Yeah, that inspired me, and also like, I was very aware of it too, because, Eric would fly out there to compete. So, I was training with him, so we'd be like, oh, he's getting ready for Big Dogs, so that's kind of what I really saw, and I was just like, how can I do that? Number one, like, how can I do that? Number two, like, why not me? You know what I mean? Like, because, there's always this feeling of like, oh, well, it's because this, it's because that. I'm like, I could do that too, So, Power Surge 2018, I started with I think I offered like $1,000, and so it was basically just my attempt towards like kind of like making something, more of a pro meet, because, at the time I felt like I'm like, okay, if there's, if people are winning cash prizes, I mean, that's kind of in a way, at least a pro meet, for because nobody was doing it at the time, especially at a local level. And so then 2019 kind of raised it. I think it was like $3,500 or whatever it was. But yeah, I kind of kept adding to it every year, and not only on the cash prize end, but also too on the production end. And so like I bought like a lighting truss, and like I bought like these like really cool like fog machines that I had for a long time. And it's funny too, because I remember like talking to other meet directors and being like, hey guys, like how can we increase our production value? Like I've been kind of looking at maybe like, these pyrotechnic stuff or these things, and they kind of like scoffed and laughed at it, and they're like, why would you do that at a powerlifting meet? And I'm like, I don't know, because I think it would really add value to it. And so, once I started doing with the volcano stuff, the volcano fog, the lighting truck, all these little things that kind of just every year I kept trying to add value to it. You know, I did championship belts. That's how the championship belts started. I think people really saw that this was different, that this wasn't me just running a standard meet where it was just like, hey, you know, come here, compete and get off the platform. I was really trying to make it a really cool experience. And so that's been kind of like, honestly, the trajectory and the goal of every Power Surge is how can I add a little bit more? Where can I improve? What can I make better? Where can I innovate and do things that maybe have either never been done before or like, you know, have been tried before, but maybe wasn't the right time, you know, because there's a time and place for everything. So that's been kind of the trajectory, like leading up into like the modern day from where we're at right now. Yeah.
You know what? Something that I love is, you know, we talk about some of those meats like the Kern. We talk about Boss of Bosses. We talk about Rum, like meats like the Kern invite only. You know, but you had sprinkle it in those earlier days pro-ams because a lot of the time there wasn't enough pro lifters to fill. Or there wasn't, simple as that, enough pro lifters to fill a weekend meet, right? Of 2 days or whatever it may be. And we've seen a massive shift over the last couple of years, right? Where these pro meets that come out are strictly pro, right? You have to be invited, you have to have qualifying, you have to this, that, the other, right? And when I started, you know, running pro meets in 2018 with the first hybrid showdown, I wanted to take that approach of what I'd seen at Boss of Bosses, you know, these amateurs competing with the pros, whatever it may be. And it's a shame that we've seen it die, but it's also a cool thing that, wow, there's so many pros out there now where, you know, you can just have the top of the top competition at this one platform. But I could easily, like, for example, reformat the Ghost Clash for it to be strictly a professional competition. But I would never do that in a million years because there's just something special about keeping that pro-am atmosphere and giving those amateurs and giving those newbies that it can be your first competition you've ever fucking competed at. But if you want to come do it, you're willing to come do it, and you want to be on the same platform as John Hack or whoever it may be, you can, you know?
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I love to see that Power Surge started as an amateur, became a pro-am, and is still a pro-am to this day. What's crazy to me is when I was making some notes, things to talk about, this year is the Power Surge 7 or 8. I'm not good at reading new Roman numerals.
8, yes, 8.
8, yeah, I saw a lot of sticks. I saw a V and a lot of sticks. I'm like, holy shit. Like, you know, I didn't take Roman class in school, but that looks crazy. So 8 fucking years, man. Like, that is absolutely insane. I don't think that we can say that there's any other, well, with the exception of Pro Raw in Australia. I think Pro Raw's on like 10 or 11, something like that. I don't think there's any other meet that has ran undisturbed for this many years. That's super freaking cool to see. So with bringing us now to present day, seeing the evolution, going for 8 years strong, watching it grow, watching powerlifting grow, brings us to present day Power Surge 2024. Talk to us about 2024. How's the roster looking? What do you have planned for it? Let's dive into that.
This year is probably the best year that we've ever had. I mean, every year the competition has gotten more competitive. It's gotten just kind of been able to attract, you know, bigger athletes and attract more people. And this is the year that I feel like it's really starting that hard work. You know, we're 8 years in, it's starting to show where people are like, hey, that's a good meet that I should consider signing up for. And this is that year where I think people are finally like, okay, let's do it. And I think the roster reflects that. I think we have some really great athletes, not only, on the end of just like the men or the women, but actually on both the men and women, just insane. I think like it's close to like 50% of the women have at least a 500 dots, you know, on the roster. And like, you know, we recently had John Hack sign up on the men's side, which was really cool because I've been wanting him to do Power Surge, you know, for a while because, you know, like I said, we're friends. I've known him for a really long time. So it'd be nice to have him out here, and he's finally signed up for it. So I'm really excited. I'm really stoked. I think, this is a year too where like we have a really strong vision of what it's supposed to look like and how it can improve. Every year is an improvement from the last, and I think this is going to be better than ever. I'm looking into kind of just really adding little things that maybe haven't been tried before into the production, into like the way that the overall vibe and like the feel of it goes. Like some of the things that we've added in the past, have been like last year we switched from the volcano fog to the cold sparklers, which really adds a nice pop. We a few years ago we started like introducing like walkout music, when people do their third attempts. We've improved like the way like just everything is set up to really look like a professional event. But what I think is really cool too about Power Surge is that it's I had one of our media people tell me this, because I asked her, I'm like, what's the difference between this and like other meets? And she's like, well, sometimes we'll photograph at like banquet halls and like big kind of recreation gyms, and it kind of feels a little bit like you're in the middle of this like big place, or a little bit almost like sterile or out of place. And one thing that she said that was really cool about Power Surge is that you can just tell that powerlifting is written in the walls. Like you come in and the gym has that character and that vibe to it, where like, it's a gym and you feel like you're in your element, but at the same time, it feels very professional and very organized towards the event. So I'm really excited, and I have a few, I guess, sort of speak tricks up my sleeve that I want to try out this year, but this is definitely going to be the best one yet, for sure.
Hell yeah, man. I love it. And it's a difficult thing finding either the right venue or facilitating your current home to be the perfect professional environment. Like, 3 years of the hybrid showdown was ran at the Hyper Gym. 5,000 square foot gym, it almost would have been cheaper for us to find a cheap venue, because we had to spend so much money hiring a company to haul everything out,
Yeah.
a boxing ring, this, that, and the other, because there wasn't enough space to split the kind of space and make it what was a really good in a gym professional meet in a professional atmosphere, and being able to knock that out of the park was cool. And me owning a gym, knowing it's not possible in my current facility, finding the right venue in and of itself is then its own other move, because like you can find a fucking hotel ballroom and a banquet hall and I don't know what, but it just screams boring and sleepy, and like what powerlifting was 10 years ago. So it's all about like the love, the energy, and the passion that's behind it. And seeing your gym, and being someone who's a gym nerd myself, who looks at other people's gyms, studies other people's gyms, takes inspiration, hates on it, whatever it may be. I could tell your gym has such a special home and such a good spot for it. I really hope that I can try to squeeze it on my calendar to be out there this year and finally be able to experience it myself as well.
That would be super cool. I'd love to have you out, because like I'm also like super into I could talk about business and gyms and events like all day long. Like I absolutely love it. And I think it's also too like, really important.
ADHD boys checking in. It helps us thrive, man. I'll tell you, it does. It really does.
That's exactly it. We find something that we want to talk about, and it's like we could go into like tunnel vision about this. But I always tell, like, especially like within my own community, I tell them, I'm like, it's so important for us to like just be there for each other and help each other out and like inspire each other, because like I don't know, like I said, I grew up in a time like when I first started there's a lot of gatekeeping, elitism. And even like sometimes even into like recent history, where I would be like, hey guys, how do you do this? How do you do that? And people would be like, oh, I don't know, or oh, Google it, or just no answers. And I'm like, why? The only thing that it can do is improve, everybody as a whole, if we're all just kind of like, hey, I found success in this didn't work for me, etc. Like there's no shame in helping other people succeed. It doesn't, take away from your own. So, I love talking about all of this stuff for sure. Yeah.
Hell yeah, man. I love it. I love it. So lineup is filling up quickly. Are there spots still available? What's it looking like that? Dates are September 28th, September 29th, right?
Yep. So right now it's full. We do have a wait list, so if anyone is interested in being on that wait list, you could definitely sign up and let me know. We are still also looking for like sponsors, so if anyone watching this is interested in sponsoring this event, definitely don't be afraid to reach out. This is very much like a passion project for us, and like as far as like really like we have sponsors and everything, right? But more sponsorships would definitely help, because right now a lot of the cash prize pool comes from out of pocket, really. So it's coming from my genuine passion for this sport and being able to offer something. And so anyone that would be interested in kind of like supporting that is definitely welcome, because that would be awesome. And I think like there's a lot that we can do this year, being one of the biggest years that we're going to have for sure.
Hell yeah. I love it. Sergio, thank you for hopping on. Last comment I want to say, it's so awesome how you were able to put your name, put your twist, put your everything into your brand name and grow it to what it has become. Surge Powerlifting, Surge to new levels. It's been awesome to see your gym over the years. Awesome to connect with you, to become friends over the last year or so on social media. I hope to make it out there. Sign us out. Let everyone know where they can find you.
Thank you for having me. And you can find me at Surge to New Levels on Instagram, or our website, surgetonewlevels.net.
Thanks for hopping on, man. I also love you don't even have your own Instagram. Your gym's Instagram is you. People know that. It's your identity, and it's freaking awesome, man. So keep killing it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the WRPF podcast.
Thank you.